The last call for help planet of Xalara had been suffering for years. It had once been a proud member of a thriving galactic alliance, filled with rich resources and peaceful cooperation. But now, under the control of the Empire, the planet had become a shadow of itself. Its cities were crumbling, its people were starving, and its once beautiful landscapes were now scarred by the Empire's ruthless mining operations. The Empire had come to Xalara for its wealth, stripping the planet of its natural resources without any regard for the suffering it caused. For years, the people of Xalara had sent out desperate calls for help, but no one responded. The galaxy, busy with its own conflicts, had ignored them. No one cared about a small, struggling world on the edge of the Empire's domain. The people had given up hope. Their planet was dying and there seemed to be no way out. But one day, everything changed. Xalara's government had sent one final plea for aid. A last attempt to reach out to any race or faction brave enough to defy the Empire. It was a desperate cry for help, one that echoed through the vastness of space. The message was broadcast to every corner of the galaxy, hoping for a miracle. "We are alone." The message began, its tone broken and weak. "The Empire has taken everything from us. We beg of you, help us before we are lost forever." It was a message filled with sorrow, the last call from a planet on the brink of extinction. No one expected anyone to listen. After all, Xalara had no allies left, and the Empire was too powerful to be challenged by one lonely, forgotten world. Thousands of light years away, the message reached the ears of someone who had been watching. Humanity, a species once dismissed as insignificant, had been biding its time. Growing stronger in secret, they had been preparing for this moment for years, quietly amassing a fleet far greater than anyone in the galaxy could imagine. The message from Xalara arrived at a critical moment. Humanity had already made their decision. The Empire had pushed too far, taking what didn't belong to them, hurting innocent people. This was no longer just a fight for survival. This was a fight for justice. Commander Carter stood in the command room of the Genesis, humanity's flagship, staring at the holo-projector that displayed the distress signal from Xalara. His crew gathered around him, each one equally moved by the message that echoed through the room. Sophia, Carter's trusted second-in-command, spoke first. "They've been asking for help for so long. Do you think they really expect anyone to come?" Carter's eyes were cold as he studied the message. He could feel the weight of the decision ahead of him. "They might have given up hope, but we won't let them fall to the Empire." Sophia nodded, her voice steady but filled with determination. "But this is risky. We're talking about facing the Empire head-on. Are we ready for that?" "We will be," Carter said, his voice resolute. "We've built the fleet, we've trained, we've prepared, we've been watching, waiting for the right moment. And this is it. The Empire will never see us coming. We will break the sky wide open." On the surface of Xalara, the people had no idea what was coming. The Empire had maintained a firm grip on the planet, and their forces were scattered throughout the world, ensuring that no rebellion would rise. But as they continued to strip the planet of its resources, they overlooked one crucial detail. Humanity was about to make its move. In the Imperial Command Center, General Corps, one of the Empire's top commanders, looked over the latest reports. Xalara was just one of many systems under their control. It wasn't a world of strategic importance, but it was rich in resources. The Empire had no plans to let it go, not now, not ever. But then, the message from Xalara reached his command post. He scoffed at first, dismissing it as another desperate cry from a weak world. But as his officers analyzed the message, they detected something troubling: an unfamiliar fleet of ships moving toward the planet. "What is this?" Kor muttered to himself. Where did these ships come from? The message from Xalara was clear. Humanity had arrived. The fleet, unlike anything the Empire had seen before, was quickly making its way towards Xalara. The Empire had underestimated humanity for far too long, and now they were about to pay the price. As the Genesis approached Xalara, Carter gave the order, "Prepare for launch. We're going to make our mark on this galaxy." The crew moved into position, their faces filled with focus and determination. They had come a long way to get here, and this was their moment. Humanity wasn't just going to stand by and watch the galaxy fall into chaos. They were going to act. The fleet of warships powered up, their engines glowing with dark energy. As they sailed towards Xalara, the skies, once silent and dark, were now alive with the sound of powerful engines. The Empire had no idea what was coming for them. Back on Xalara, the people looked up at the sky, still unaware of the force humanity was about to unleash. They had given up hope, and yet they could feel something different in the air. The very sky seemed to vibrate with the power of a force they didn't understand. For the first time in years, they had hope again. The galaxy had ignored their cries for help, but humanity had heard them. They had answered, and the battle for Xalara's freedom was about to begin. Asterisk the sky shattered humanity strike's first moment had arrived. The sky above Xalara, once quiet and dark, now flickered with energy as humanity's fleet approached at breakneck speed. It was a sight no one on the planet had ever imagined, a fleet of ships, powerful and gleaming, cutting through space like a knife. Humanity had come to Xalara's aid, and the galaxy would never be the same. On the Genesis, Commander Carter stood at the command center, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes focused on the view screen. The fleet was ready for battle. The dark matter warships, humanity's trump card, loomed in the background, their engines humming with raw power. These ships weren't just vessels, they were symbols of humanity's determination and strength. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for too long, and now it was time for them to feel the consequences. All systems online, Sophia said, her voice calm, yet filled with an undeniable energy. The fleet is locked into position, we're ready to engage. Carter nodded, his expression hard as steel. Initiate the assault, we're not here to play games. We're here to end this. Below, on the surface of Xalara, the people watched in awe as the skies above them lit up. The Empire's presence was overwhelming, with massive ships that patrolled the planet, ensuring their control. But today, things were different. The Empire's ships suddenly began to blink out, their shields failing as the mysterious new ships from humanity began their assault. It was as if the sky itself had come alive with fury. The first blast from a dark matter warship struck the Empire's command station in orbit, obliterating it in a single, devastating shot. The explosion sent shockwaves through space, lighting up the entire sky. The Empire's forces scrambled to respond, but their efforts were futile. The human warships moved with a terrifying precision, their firepower unmatched by anything the Empire had in its arsenal. We've never seen ships like these, muttered an Empire officer, watching in disbelief as humanity's ships tore through their defenses with ease. What are they? General Kor, aboard the Empire's flagship, stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. He had never expected this. Humanity had never been a threat in his lifetime now. They were tearing through the Empire's forces as if they had always been prepared for this war. The sight of their ships was both a wonder and a nightmare. Prepare the fleet for full engagement, Kor commanded, his voice sharp. We can't let them control the skies. They will pay for their audacity. But even as he gave the orders, Kor knew deep down that something was wrong. Humanity's ships moved too fast, hit too hard, and were too unpredictable. This wasn't a rebellion, it was an invasion. Back on Xalara, the people couldn't believe their eyes. For years, they had been living in fear under the Empire's crushing rule, and now, in a single moment, their prayers had been answered. The humans had arrived not as saviors from a distant world, but as warriors, unstoppable and fearless. It's them, humanity, one of the Xalaran leaders shouted. As he watched the battle unfold, they've come to save us. The Empire's forces were retreating, their ships torn apart in the blink of an eye. The Xalarans felt a surge of hope, something they hadn't felt in years. The humans were doing what no one else had dared to do, fighting for them. As the battle raged on, Xalaran civilians gathered in the streets, their eyes fixed on the sky, cheering as the dark matter warships continued to devastate the Empire's fleet. The air was thick with a sense of triumph, but also confusion. Could it be true? Were the humans really here to stay? Back on the Genesis, Carter paced the command deck, his eyes scanning the tactical displays. The Empire's response was fierce, but their forces were scattered, their communication lines cut off. Humanity's precision strikes were taking down critical points one by one, and it was clear that the Empire's hold on Xalara was slipping away. Sophia turned to Carter, her face set with determination. We've won the first phase, but the Empire will come at us with everything they've got. They won't give up this easily. Carter nodded, his expression hardening. No, they won't. But that's exactly why we have to hit them now. We can't let them regroup. We hit them while they're weak, and we don't stop until they know we're not going anywhere. Sophia's eyes glinted with a sharp edge of confidence. Understood, I'll make sure our forces are ready to strike again. As the battle continued, the tide began to turn in favor of humanity. The Empire's ships, once so powerful and unchallenged, were now scattered and retreating. Humanity's warships, though fewer in number, fought with precision and strength, driven by a cause far greater than any battle, the fight for freedom. Above Xalara, the skies were clear once more. The Empire's flagships reduced to nothing more than drifting wreckage. The planet, once doomed to fall under the Empire's rule forever, was now free thanks to the sudden arrival of humanity. We've done it, Sophia said, her voice filled with relief as the last of the Empire's ships fell silent. Xalara is safe. Carter stood still for a moment, looking out over the planet. He knew this battle was just the beginning. The Empire might have lost today, but the war was far from over. The galaxy was vast, and many worlds still lay under the Empire's iron grip. But for the people of Xalara and for humanity, today was a victory they would never forget. The battle had been won, but a new chapter in the galaxy's story had just begun. Humanity had not only saved Xalara, they had sent a message to the galaxy. The Empire was no longer invincible, humanity was here. And they would no longer live in the shadows. They had broken the sky wide open and nothing would ever be the same again. The suspense remained. What would the Empire do next? Would other systems rise up against the Empire? Inspired by humanity's victory, the galaxy had just witnessed the birth of a new power. The question now was, how far would humanity go to change the future of the galaxy? Asterisk, the Empire strikes back, a force to be reckoned with. Victory on Xalara was a turning point in the war, but the Empire was not a force to be taken lightly. The shockwaves of the battle reverberated through the galaxy, and while many systems celebrated humanity's unexpected rise, the Empire was gathering its strength for retaliation. General Corps, now more determined than ever, prepared for humanity's next move, fully aware that the fight was far from over. Aboard the Genesis, Carter and his crew were focused on their next steps. The battle had been won, but it had also drawn attention to humanity's power, and the Empire wouldn't sit idly by. The question now was, could humanity sustain their victory? Could they hold their ground against the vast, ruthless forces of the Empire? The warships of the Empire, though in disarray after their defeat at Xalara, had regrouped. General Corps was no longer willing to take chances. He was ready to deploy everything he had. The Genesis and its fleet had shaken the Empire's belief in its invincibility. But it was clear that this was only the beginning of a much larger conflict. Ready for the next mission, Sophia said as she stood beside Carter, her voice calm but filled with anticipation. They had just finished analyzing the latest intelligence reports. The Empire will come at us with everything they've got. This isn't going to be a small skirmish. We need a new strategy. Carter turned to face her, his expression grim. I know, the next battle won't be as easy as the last. But we've made them fear us. Now we need to use that to our advantage. If we can break their command structure, we can throw them into chaos. Sophia's eyes narrowed. We've got the strength, Commander, but we need to move fast. The longer we wait, the more they'll prepare. Their fleets are rebuilding. We need to strike now, before they can counter us. Carter nodded. We'll do it. We take the fight to their heart. We strike at their communication hubs, their fleets, and their command centers. We force them into a corner. They won't be able to regroup if we keep them off balance. On the other side of the galaxy, General Corps stood before the Empire's War Council, his face a mask of anger and determination. He had underestimated humanity once. He wouldn't make that mistake again. The Genesis had disrupted their plans, but the Empire's vast resources still gave them the edge. Corps wasn't going to let a handful of ships ruin the Empire's centuries of dominance. We will not let this rebellion continue. Corps' voice rang through the chamber. Humanity may have won one battle, but they are not invincible. They will regret ever challenging the Empire. His officers nodded in agreement, though they knew the task ahead was daunting. The human fleet had proven formidable, but the Empire's retaliatory strike would be devastating. The forces they could muster now were overwhelming. Humanity had woken the sleeping giant, and now it was time to crush them once and for all. As the Genesis prepared for its next mission, the crew knew the risks were higher than ever. Humanity had shown its strength, but now it would face the full might of the Empire. The question was no longer whether humanity could win. It was whether they could survive the Empire's wrath. We need to hit them hard and fast, Carter said, rallying his crew. We don't have time to waste. The Empire is mobilizing. We hit them where it hurts their resources, their command centers. If we can disrupt their ability to coordinate, we'll cripple their efforts. Sophia's voice was filled with certainty. They'll expect us to go for the big targets. We'll give them that, but we'll also hit them where they least expect it by taking out their communication networks. If we cut their links to the rest of the Empire, they won't be able to retaliate effectively. Carter's eyes gleamed with determination. Exactly. We keep them guessing. We move in and out before they know what hit them. We don't give them a chance to regroup. The next strike was swift, brutal, and full of precision. Humanity's warships, now a well-oiled machine, moved with efficiency through Empire-controlled space, targeting communication hubs and military outposts. The Empire, though strong, was caught off guard at every turn. The Genesis led the charge, its weapons firing with deadly precision, taking down key targets one by one. As the Empire scrambled to react, the people of the galaxy, especially the oppressed systems, began to feel the shift. The power dynamic was changing. Humanity wasn't just a rebel force anymore. They were a symbol of hope, a force that could actually defeat the Empire. And though the Empire fought back fiercely, they knew they were fighting a battle they couldn't win, not without losing everything. On the surface of Xalara, The planet's people looked up at the skies, watching as humanity's fleet continued to strike fear into the Empire. There was no turning back now. Humanity had become a symbol of resistance and power, and the galaxy was beginning to realize that the tide was turning. The Empire, once seen as unbeatable, was now faltering under the weight of humanity's attacks. As the battle raged, Carter knew they had to keep the pressure on. Every strike, every victory, was one step closer to ending the Empire's reign over the galaxy. But even as they succeeded, the tension remained. The Empire would retaliate again. They would fight to the last breath, and humanity would have to be ready. General Kor's frustration grew as his forces continued to be outmaneuvered by the humans. The Genesis and its fleet had proven to be a nightmare to face. Their speed, their precision, their ability to strike and retreat with no trace, they were the new threat in the galaxy. And Kor realized that if the Empire didn't act decisively, they would lose everything. The time for hesitation is over, Kor said, his voice low with fury. Prepare for full-scale retaliation. We end this now. As the Empire's forces began to prepare for their final assault, humanity stood ready for the inevitable showdown. The stakes had never been higher. The galaxy had watched as humanity fought back against impossible odds. Now, it was time to finish the fight. The outcome was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity would not back down. The final confrontation, humanity's last stand, space between the stars seemed to grow colder, darker as the final clash between humanity and the Empire loomed ahead. The Genesis had become a symbol of hope across the galaxy, its fleet a beacon for all those who had lived in fear under the Empire's rule. Yet, even as humanity's forces prepared for the ultimate battle, a feeling of uncertainty lingered in the air. This was not a war they had chosen, but it was one they would fight to the end. General Kor, the Empire's last hope, stood on the command deck of his flagship, his mind focused and ruthless. The Empire's forces, once scattered and disorganized, had now come together in a final push to reclaim control over the galaxy. He had mobilized the full might of the Empire, and he would not allow a few rebels to destroy everything the Empire had built. Ready the fleet, Kor ordered, his voice a hard whisper as he stared at the holographic display of the galaxy. We make our move now. If we don't strike with everything we have, we lose it all. The war was no longer just about survival, it was about legacy. The Empire's centuries of dominance, built on fear and oppression, were now being threatened by humanity's audacity. Kor could feel the pressure mounting. He had to crush humanity before they could build something greater. On the Genesis, Carter knew the final battle was upon them. There was no going back. If humanity failed here, the galaxy would return to its old ways, an endless cycle of oppression under the Empire's control. But they had come too far. They had already proven that humanity was more than just an insignificant species in the galaxy. Get ready for the final assault, Carter said, his voice steady but with an edge of resolve. We strike with everything we've got. We've already shown them that we can take their best shot. Now we show them what happens when humanity fights for its future. Sophia stepped forward, her gaze fierce. We've pushed them back time and time again. This time we finish it. No more retreating. No more waiting for their counterattack. This is our moment. As the Genesis and its fleet powered up, the vast warships hummed with energy. The crew moved in perfect harmony, each member focused on the task ahead. The stakes couldn't be higher. This wasn't just about a planet or a battle, it was about the fate of the galaxy itself. Above Xalara, the Empire's fleet gathered like a dark storm cloud, their warships ominous in the starry expanse. The Empire's ships, once unrivaled, were now old, outmatched by the speed and power of humanity's dark matter warships. But the Empire had one final advantage: sheer size. The Empire's fleet was massive, more than enough to overwhelm humanity's smaller numbers. But as Kor watched his forces move into position, he could feel the growing sense of unease. His fleet might be big, but the Genesis was a new kind of weapon, one they couldn't predict, and one they couldn't afford to ignore. Kor's fingers tightened around the armrest of his command chair. This ends today for the Empire, he muttered. Back on Xalara, the planet's citizens watched as the sky began to darken with the approach of the Imperial fleet. The people had no weapons, no way to defend themselves, but they had humanity. They had seen the unimaginable power that humanity possessed, and for the first time in years, they felt the stirrings of hope. We will be free, a leader of Xalara whispered, watching as the human warships formed their battle lines. The people had been living in fear for so long, but now they knew they had allies who were willing to risk everything to protect them. But the question was, would humanity's strength be enough to defeat the full might of the Empire? The two fleets, one massive and imposing, the other fast and agile, now faced each other in the cold void of space. The Genesis and its fleet, though fewer in number, stood undaunted. The Empire, despite its overwhelming size, had been thrown off balance by humanity's relentless strikes. The moment of truth had arrived. The first shots were fired as the Empire's fleet launched a barrage of energy beams toward humanity's ships. The Empire's ships were larger, heavily armored, but humanity's ships were faster, with more precise targeting. The Genesis evaded the incoming fire with ease, returning fire with devastating force, targeting the weak points in the Empire's defenses. Humanity's warships began to pick apart the Empire's fleet, one ship at a time, as the Empire's counterattack faltered. The battle was intense, the sound of weaponry reverberating across the stars. But then, something unexpected happened. General Kor unleashed the Empire's last trump card, a fleet of warships. Unlike anything humanity had faced before, these ships were equipped with technology scavenged from the remnants of the Empire. Weapons that could rival the power of humanity's dark matter warships. This is it, Carter muttered, watching as the new fleet arrived. We'll need to push harder. This is a fight we cannot afford to lose. The battle escalated, and both sides threw everything they had into the conflict. Humanity's ships took heavy damage, but they fought with a fire that the Empire's fleet could not match. They fought for freedom, for the future of the galaxy. And for the first time, the Empire was forced to play defense. The final moments of the battle were a blur of fire and destruction. The Genesis flew through the heart of the Empire's fleet, its weapons tearing through ships in a calculated dance of death. As the final blow was dealt, General Kor's flagship was destroyed, taking with it the last of the Empire's command structure. With the final blow struck, the battle was over. The Empire had fallen, humanity had won, but the cost was immense. The galaxy lay in ruins. But for the first time, it had a chance to rebuild. The people of Xalara, along with the countless others who had suffered under the Empire's rule, looked up at the sky, knowing that the battle was over and the future was theirs to create. Carter stood at the command deck of the Genesis, his heart heavy but filled with quiet pride. We've done it. The Empire is gone. The galaxy is free. But he knew the journey was far from over. The real work had just begun. Now, humanity had to prove that they could lead a fractured galaxy toward peace and unity. It would take time, and it would take effort, but humanity had proven they were ready for the task. They had shattered the sky, and now they would rebuild the galaxy. Aftermath. The galaxy reborn or ripped apart. The battle was over. But the war was not truly won. The Empire's forces had crumbled, their command shattered, their fleets broken, but the galaxy was far from unified. In the wake of humanity's victory, the void left by the fall of the Empire was vast, and the question of who would fill it remained unanswered. The systems that had been under the Empire's control for so long were uncertain about what the future held. Some feared humanity's rise, seeing them as just another empire in the making. Others, who had long suffered, now saw hope in humanity's strength, but that hope was not enough to quiet their doubts. As the Genesis sailed through the wreckage of the battlefield, Carter stood at the helm, looking out into the darkness of space. The stars seemed colder somehow than they had before the battle. The galaxy had changed. But would it change for the better? Commander, Sophia's voice broke his thoughts. The reports are coming in from the galaxy. It's not just the Empire we need to worry about now. There's unrest everywhere. Carter turned, his expression somber. What do you mean? Sophia's face was etched with concern. The systems that fought with us, the ones that have been liberated, some of them are afraid. They don't know what to expect. We're a symbol of resistance, but we're also a new power. Some are already rallying behind us. But others think we're just the next empire. They think we're going to come for their worlds, control them the way the Empire did. Carter sighed, his gaze hardening. We're not the Empire, we fight for freedom. For a galaxy where no one is oppressed. But words alone won't change their fears. We'll have to show them. In the days following the Empire's fall, the Genesis moved deeper into the galaxy, setting its sights on rebuilding the peace. It was a fragile peace, held together by a fragile hope. Humanity had defeated an empire. But now they were faced with the greatest challenge of all, unifying a galaxy fractured by centuries of oppression. General Kor, though dead, had left a legacy of division. The remnants of the Empire were still out there, hidden in the far reaches of space, waiting to regroup and strike again. These factions, though disorganized, were no less dangerous. They saw humanity's rise as a threat, and they would stop at nothing to restore their former power. As the Genesis moved closer to the former heart of the Empire, Carter and his crew knew that their mission had changed. They weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting for the future of the galaxy. We need to make alliances, Carter said as he gathered his command team. We have to unite the systems that are on the fence. And we need to eliminate the remnants of the Empire before they can rally. We're in charge now, but we need to lead with wisdom, not just strength. Sophia looked at him, her gaze serious. We need more than alliances, Carter. We need to show them that we're not just here to rule, we need to rebuild trust. The systems that fought with us, they're looking to us for leadership. But the others? They see us as a threat. We can't just overpower them, we have to prove ourselves. The first step in their new mission was a trip to the planet of Valoria, one of the most prosperous and influential systems in the galaxy. Valoria had once been a close ally to the Empire, and its leaders were now skeptical of humanity's intentions. They were the first test for humanity's ability to lead, not with force, but with diplomacy. When the Genesis arrived in Valoria's orbit, Carter was met by the planet's governor, Senator Varon, a shrewd politician who had remained neutral during the war. His reputation for being level-headed had kept Valoria out of the Empire's direct control, but it also meant he didn't trust anyone easily, not even humanity. I've heard much about you, Commander Carter, Varon said as he greeted Carter in the council chambers. His voice was calm, but there was a hard edge to it. But I must admit, I'm not convinced that humanity's rise is the answer to the galaxy's problems. Carter met his gaze, his voice steady. I understand your hesitation, Senator, but I'm not here to offer an empire. I'm here to offer a chance at something better, a galaxy where we work together, where no one is ruled by fear. Varon raised an eyebrow. And you think you can build that with nothing but power? The Empire did the same, Commander. They said they were bringing peace. We all know how that ended. Carter's eyes narrowed. We're not the Empire, and we've already proven that we can fight for freedom, but now, we need your help to make sure that the galaxy doesn't fall back into the same mistakes. The meeting with Varon wasn't a victory, but it wasn't a defeat either. The senator was cautious, but he agreed to open diplomatic channels with humanity. This was the first of many meetings that would take place across the galaxy. As Carter and his crew worked to rebuild the fractured alliances, some systems joined quickly, eager for the new order humanity promised. Others, like Valoria, took their time, carefully considering their options. As the Genesis moved from one system to another, Carter felt the weight of leadership settle upon him. He had not expected this part of the war. The challenge of uniting a divided galaxy, victory, had come with a price. There was no longer an empire to fight, but there were still enemies, factions that sought power, and those who feared humanity's rise. And then there were the Empire's loyalists, who had gone underground, planning their return. The remnants of the Empire were not gone, they had simply scattered, waiting for their chance to strike again. Humanity's mission was far from over. They would need to fight on multiple fronts against external enemies, internal betrayals, and their own fear of becoming what they had once fought against. The next phase of the journey was just beginning. The galaxy was in turmoil, and humanity stood as its last hope. The future would not be easy, but Carter and his crew were determined to prove that they had the strength, wisdom, and will to lead, not with domination but with unity. The war had ended, but the real battle for trust, for peace, for the future of the galaxy was just beginning. Humanity had shattered the heavens, and now it was time to rebuild the stars. Shadows of the past. The hidden factions. Humanity had shattered the Empire, but as they attempted to rebuild, the shadows of the past began to stir. The galaxy was far from stable, and with the collapse of the Empire, there was now a power vacuum, one that neither the leaders of the Galactic Council nor the Genesis could easily control. Despite their victory, humanity's struggle was far from over. As the Genesis sailed through the stars, Carter knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. The galaxy had long been divided by power, greed, and distrust. It wasn't enough to simply defeat the Empire. They had to prove to the galaxy that humanity could lead with integrity. But even as Carter worked to forge new alliances, there were enemies stirring in the darkness. Commander, we've picked up unusual activity in the Outer Rim, Sophia said, her voice cutting through the stillness of the command deck. It's not Empire loyalists, but it's organized, well-funded. We think there's a new faction forming. They've been gathering resources, ships, even mercenaries. Carter turned to face her, his brow furrowed. Another warlord faction. Sophia shook her head. Not exactly. This isn't just another power grab, it's different. They're using the old Empire's tactics, but they're operating on a smaller scale. They've been sending encrypted messages calling for a return to the old order, a rebirth of the Empire, but with a new leadership, a more ruthless leadership. Carter's gaze hardened. So we're not just facing the remnants of the Empire, we're dealing with people who want to recreate it, only this time they're playing a quieter game underground in the shadows. The next few days aboard the Genesis were filled with tension as they navigated the political landscape that was rapidly changing around them. Humanity was still an unknown force in the galaxy, an outsider, albeit a powerful one. Some systems were already rallying behind them, but many others still held onto old allegiances. fearful of change. The galaxy has lived under the Empire's shadow for so long, Sophia said. Her voice filled with concern. Now, it's trying to find its place. But there are forces that don't want to change. There are still those who would see the galaxy fall back into chaos, and they'll do whatever it takes to make sure humanity doesn't succeed. Carter clenched his fists. We can't let them take us back to what we fought against. Humanity didn't just defeat the Empire, we destroyed the idea that power should be wielded through fear. If we don't stop these factions from regaining control, we'll have to fight a war on two fronts, the one with the Empire's loyalists, and the one with those who still want to recreate that Empire's corrupt ways. The first sign that the hidden factions were more than just whispers came when a series of coordinated attacks hit several of humanity's key allies. These new groups, though small, were highly organized. They launched guerrilla-style attacks on critical infrastructure, sabotaged communication networks, and even assassinated key leaders who were vocal in their support of humanity's new order. Who's behind this? Carter asked, watching the reports roll in. The violence was unlike anything humanity had faced since the fall of the Empire. It was strategic. Deliberate. We don't know for sure, but it's coordinated. These aren't random rebels. They have resources, and they know what they're doing, Sophia said, her voice growing more urgent. We suspect it's a coalition of former Empire officials, warlords, and a few rogue systems who are trying to regain power. They're spreading dissent and destabilizing our new alliances. Carter's expression darkened. If they can turn our allies against us, it's not just Xalara or humanity's warships they'll target. They'll tear apart everything we've worked for. The Empire's influence might have crumbled, but the scars it left behind were deep. As humanity's fleet made its way deeper into the galaxy, they encountered resistance from factions that still clung to the old Empire's ways. They were not just fighting for power, they were fighting to reinstate the ideals of the Empire. Control through fear, division, and oppression. The worst part? These factions weren't acting in the open. They moved through the shadows, manipulating political leaders, forging alliances with those who believed humanity's rise was to set in. Too violent. They whispered promises of a return to the order the galaxy had known for centuries. A world where strength ruled over kindness, where unity came from dominance. One of the most dangerous factions, known as the Syndicate, had risen from the ashes of the old Imperial elite. Unlike other factions, they were not content with operating in the shadows. They were bold, and their message was clear. Humanity's rise was not a new beginning, but a usurpation of the galaxy's rightful leaders. The Syndicate was gaining influence rapidly, using the remnants of Imperial technology and military forces to destabilize key systems. They're smart, Carter said, looking at the reports of the Syndicate's growing presence. They're not acting like rebels, they're playing the political game, making deals with the galaxy's wealthy systems and military leaders. If we don't stop them now, they'll have enough power to rally the galaxy behind them. Sophia nodded. They know exactly where to strike. They've infiltrated the trade hubs, the power systems. They're playing the game of fear and promises, convincing the neutral systems that humanity is too dangerous to control. The crew of the Genesis knew what they had to do. The fight was no longer just about defeating the Empire, it was about stopping these hidden factions from regaining control. Humanity's victory had given them a chance to rewrite the galaxy's future. But the work wasn't done. It was time to hunt down the Syndicate and other rogue factions, expose their lies, and dismantle their operations. Time to show the galaxy who we really are, Carter said, standing in front of the crew. We don't just fight with ships, we fight with our values, with unity. If the galaxy is going to be ours to lead, we have to prove that we can build a future free from the chains of the Empire. As the Genesis prepared to confront the Syndicate, Carter knew that this battle would be different. This wouldn't be a battle of strength alone, it would be a battle of ideals. Humanity had won the war, but now they had to win the galaxy's trust. They had to prove that they weren't just another empire waiting to take the throne. The future of the galaxy rested in their hands. But as humanity's true enemies emerged from the shadows, the question remained, could they stop the growing tide of power that sought to bring them down, or would they become the very thing they had once fought against? The heart of the storm. Humanity's last gamble. Tension in the galaxy had reached a boiling point. Humanity's rise had begun with a simple goal: to free the oppressed, to show the galaxy that a better future was possible. But as they had fought and bled for that future, darker forces had begun to rise in the shadows. The Syndicate and other factions had proven themselves formidable adversaries, not just in terms of military power, but in the subtle manipulation of the galaxy's fragile politics. But Carter and his crew knew that their mission wasn't over, not by a long shot. Humanity had made its stand, and now they would have to fight not just to survive, But to lead the galaxy to the future they had promised. With the syndicate spreading fear and doubt in the neutral systems, the Genesis and its fleet prepared for the final confrontation. The syndicate had infiltrated the major trade routes, bribed political leaders, and stirred rebellion among the galaxy's power brokers. It was a fight that would not just be won on the battlefield. It would be won in the hearts and minds of the galaxy's citizens. "Commander, we've gathered all the intelligence we could," Sophia said, walking into the command room with a grim expression. "The syndicate has gathered in the outer sector. They're planning a rallying point to incite a civil war. If they succeed, we'll lose the neutral systems, we'll lose everything." Carter stood by the tactical display, his eyes scanning the data. The syndicate's influence had spread faster than anyone had anticipated. Their message had reached the ears of the galaxy's most powerful systems, and now they were preparing to launch their final strike. "We need to disrupt them before they can mobilize," Carter said firmly. "We hit them where it hurts their influence, we'll sabotage their rally, expose their true goals. We're not just fighting for Xalara or the Genesis anymore, we're fighting for the entire galaxy. We'll show them that we're not just here to fight, we're here to lead." The fleet set course for the outer sector, humanity's ships moving with purpose. They were going to dismantle the syndicate's operation from within, not with brute force, but with strategy and intelligence. The galaxy was watching. Humanity had already proven that they could fight, but now they had to prove they could lead without repeating the mistakes of the Empire. As the Genesis neared the syndicate's stronghold, Carter stood before his crew, his voice steady. "This is it. We've been preparing for this moment for a long time. We are the galaxy's future, but we can't just defeat them. We need to show the galaxy that we will lead with unity, with strength, and with honor. The syndicate may have their influence, but we have something they can't control: our ideals." When they arrived at the syndicate's base, the skies were filled with tension. The Genesis and its fleet silently moved into position, their advanced technology cloaking them in the darkness of space. The syndicate had prepared for this moment, but they hadn't anticipated humanity's strike to come so soon, and certainly not with such overwhelming force. As the first shots rang out, the syndicate's fleet scrambled into defense. Their ships, though powerful, were slow to react. Humanity's fleet, smaller in number but faster and more precise, tore through their defenses like a blade through cloth. The fight was brutal, but it was over quickly. The syndicate forces, unprepared for the speed and power of humanity's fleet, began to disintegrate, their vessels falling one by one. But the real victory came not in the destruction of their ships, but in the moment when humanity exposed the syndicate's true plans. Broadcast across the galaxy were the messages showing their manipulation of systems, their plots to create chaos and division. The people of the galaxy, watching the broadcast on every screen, saw the syndicate for what they truly were: agents of fear and division, seeking to return the galaxy to the old ways. On the surface of Xalara, the people cheered as the syndicate's forces were crushed. They knew that the future of their planet and of the galaxy had just changed. Humanity had proven that they weren't just a rebel force, they were leaders, bringing peace and unity to a fractured galaxy. But even in the midst of victory, Carter knew the job wasn't finished. There were still remnants of the syndicate out there, and other factions that had seen the rise of humanity as a threat. The Empire had fallen, but the battle for the future of the galaxy would continue. Humanity had to prove that their victory was not just about defeating the old regime, but about creating something new, something better. "Today, we proved that we are not just a force of destruction," Carter said in his speech to the galaxy, broadcast to every corner of space. "We are a force for unity, for peace. We are not here to conquer, we are here to lead, to build a galaxy where no one is oppressed, where every world has a voice." The galaxy watched in silence as Carter's words echoed across the stars. The message was clear: humanity wasn't just here to take the place of the Empire, they were here to break the cycle of violence and build a new order, one that was free from fear, oppression, and division. As the Genesis moved further into the galaxy, the crew knew that the road ahead was still full of challenges, but for the first time in history, humanity had proven that they could lead not with fear, but with strength, honor, and unity. And with that victory, the future of the galaxy was finally within their reach. The shadows of the past still loomed over them, but humanity had broken through. The galaxy was no longer ruled by the Empire, it was now ruled by something stronger: hope, and that hope would guide them into the future.